Ooh, we're further. There's hope.
There
Done.
we go. Have we started?
Okay. Apologize for the delay. We were having some technical difficulties here at school, so we have restarted the meeting, started over, and here we go.
Okay. I'd like to call the regular meeting of August 24th, 2020 to order. Roll call, please, Veronica.
Ms. Caswell-Latrell.
Here.
Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Buziak.
Here.
Ms. Ive.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Ms. Ori.
Hopefully she'll come back. Oh, she's not in yet.
She's not here. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Sorry. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Denise, did we have any late arriving public comments?
No, we do not.
No public comments, and I did not receive any addition of non-action items. So we go on to action items, the final reading and approval of board policies. These have been on 2 agendas now. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or concerns? Okay, I'd like to move that we that we approve the board policies as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please, Veronica.
Mr. Coleman.
No.
Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Buziak.
Yes.
Ms. Ive.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
Ms. Ori.
Is Audrey there yet?
No.
Okay.
Ms. Caswell-Latrell.
Yes. Item passes. On to item B, approval to renew thought exchange.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the renewal of thought exchange services in the amount of $12,600.
Second.
Do we have questions about this? This is not something we've discussed yet, I don't think. But it's possible that everybody has seen the, the benefit to thought exchange at this point and how important it is, especially this year. Dr. Lynn, can you?
Yes, that is an annual,
When does it last?
next August. So it's up at the end of this month.
Could you please review like what it is briefly, and then what the value that we've gotten out of it this year?
Sure. So the thought exchange is a artificial intelligence feedback tool that we use. It's more than a survey tool. It's feedback that we've been using to generate discussion, to allow large groups to participate in a discussion. And what it does is it narrows down people's thoughts into different categories and ranks them. So you get more of a broader approach and a more rounded approach to what might be the feelings of the community on a certain topic. We used it last year when we went to remote learning a lot to get feedback, and it helped us design our plan for this upcoming year, which was great. It allowed more people to voice their thoughts and opinions, and you really got to see what parents were thinking. And sometimes, for me, sometimes we hear from a few parents who might be more involved, But this allowed us to hear from a broader range of parents who may not otherwise have access to share their thoughts or not feel comfortable enough approaching us, the administration or the board, on what their thoughts might be on the topic. So that's the real value of it, and getting a community in-depth feedback and understanding in that manner. So
We also used it for our strategic plan.
we did. That's
Um,
right. That was so long ago now.
I know.
Feels
Just
like it.
3 years ago. I think we've been talking about a tool like this since I got on the board, and it's just nothing has been what we wanted it to be, and I feel like this is what we were waiting for, this dynamic way of getting a broad idea of what people think. Are there questions?
Yeah, are there similar products out there, or is this like the only one?
There are many similar products out there, but not that's this robust and easy to use, and they're all expensive. This the full price for this is if we got the full package is double. It's 25,000. So we're getting the lowest package, so to speak, that they offer.
Anything else from
So Brendan, there was another one that was looked at that
That's right.
connected Jason with them, that has been used in the corporate world, and it's far more expensive.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks. I like it. It's just the price tag just is so steep, but I mean, it's definitely worth it, I think, especially they've shown its worth.
I continue to remind them of that for small districts, because the price, if we got the full package, the price would be the same as if we were a district like Stevenson and a district like us. So I feel like we shouldn't pay for the full price. They say, well, but it's the same benefit on their end. They have to train somebody just as much as if we're small as if we're big. So their support, I will say their support is amazing, and they are, even after we purchased, many times their support team has reached out to me to say, hey, what can I help you with? And here's some ideas that you can use this for. So they want you to use their product versus just sell, which I really appreciate. It's a very quality company, but it is expensive. Very expensive.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions? Okay, then roll call please, Veronica.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Buziak,
No.
Ms. I,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes,
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Caswell Tourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to item C, public display of tentative budget fiscal year 2021.
I'd like to make a motion to display, for the public display of the tentative budget for fiscal year 2021.
Do we have,
So would you like me to show the summary page, Steve? Would that be a good way to start?
the second email I sent you.
Oh, you sent me two.
One small change.
I like the first one.
Well, the first one didn't have the funny money,
Oh, the flow through, or not the flow through, the
yeah,
on behalf payments.
that's the part that we have to put in our budget that the state is supposed to pay, that they don't always pay.
oh, right.
So we have to show it as both revenue and expenses. And of course, we won't know what that number really is until after the audit. Because the CRS has to do their audit, and then they get that information to the auditor so they can calculate it. So I just make it higher each year,
That's really hard to estimate.
and just make a guess.
which is so much fun if you're the budgeter.
Well, at least it doesn't matter because it's the same revenue and expenses, so it's not a big deal on the auditing, on the budget portion of it. Makes no difference.
It just takes me a second to pull this up because I'm downloading it so that we can actually see it.
And I know when I tried to make it a PDF, it was only 3 pages, so hopefully you'll do have better luck.
I won't at the moment, but
I mean, I'll figure it out eventually. I actually did get one that did more, but then it won't let me delete the down pages, so.
Steve, while we're doing the presentation, I'm actually having trouble hearing you from here, so
Okay.
I'm thinking they probably won't. Is everyone comfortable if Steve removes his mask for the budget presentation?
I'll do that.
Yeah.
I think that's how I broke my glasses before, though. They flipped off on the floor when I was taking off the mask.
Mask issues.
We'll get around to it. We'll make it work.
well, I'm having all kinds of new fun tonight.
It doesn't mess up until you're in the middle of a board meeting. That's
Right.
That's the rule.
I had it all lined up and ready to go.
It's okay, we're patient people.
There.
There we go.
Do you want the budget summary or the cash summary?
Well, I had the budget summary, but we can use
Perfect.
the cash summary. They both pretty much, the only thing the cash summary doesn't show exactly is it doesn't show the transfers, but I can kind of point those out.
Okay. Tell me where to point and I'll.
Okay, we're
I'll
gonna
go.
start off with, and know that our budget is on a cash basis, our audit is on an accrual basis. So the cash is the cash we had on hand as of June 30th, or as of July 1.
Could you try to briefly explain the difference between cash and accrual?
Probably the easiest way to look at it for our district is that, for instance, the teacher's contract runs from the end of August till the middle of August. But our budget year is July 1 to June 30th. So they're getting paid in July and they're getting 3 payments in this current fiscal year that is for work they did the prior year. So the accrual budget actually takes those, and that's the biggest piece that makes the adjustment. It takes that salary and backs it up to last fiscal year. And the money they got in July and the first payment in August, the prior year goes to the year before. So basically their total contract gets charged to last school year. So that's kind of really what it does. It's also one of those things that, let's say that we purchase something June 28th, and in reality, it's not going to be used until the fall. Then we automatically will give the auditor information so they can take that out of this year's expenses and charge it to the following year's expenses. So those are kind of the accrual adjustments that we make. It's a fairly simple adjustment, not as complex as if we were a business, but basically looking at the things in a school year that are things that are attributable to that school year. Even though we may pay them later, or we may purchase something early but not use it till the next year. If we put it in use right away, then it counts for that fiscal year. So basically, this is showing at this point in the ed fund budget, about $6.2 million in cash in the bank. Looking at revenue anticipated of just under 14 million. That will mean the total amount available is 20.15 million. Total disbursements of 14,155,54. And then the ending cash balance on hand is 5,996,000. So you're down a couple $100,000 basically. If you're looking at the other one that Jason has up there, it's going to show you basically the same thing, except the major reason why there's that difference, if you scroll down to the other revenues pledged to pay principal and capital leases. Oh, I'm opening the wrong budget.
I was wondering why your numbers didn't quite
That's why
match.
the numbers don't match.
Yeah, 20, 20,
Just a little.
Oh. We'll make it match now. So beginning balance is 5,799,272. Does that match that? Jason?
Yep.
Okay. And then we have revenues of 14,182,100. On behalf payment of 7,500,000. Expenses of 13,884,124. And I think by the time we bring this for adoption, that number is going to be higher. And there's some of the pieces, like some of the software, that I'm not sure I captured everything, as well as allowing for some of the additional PPE things that we're going to need to purchase. But basically saying that we had $297,976 more than we had expenses. So our revenue exceeded our expenses until we go below and look at the transfers. And the first one shows that for the 7,400s, the yellow, shows the transfers to debt service, and the yellow there in the center. But if you scroll down, it shows they're coming from the ed fund. So we had because we had 2 Apple leases this year, we had $198,196 going toward principal and $1,670 going toward interest for the lease. And then we have our $50,000 tax abatement. So we're transferring out of the ed fund $249,866. And then they've added in the student activity fund balance.
So,
Piece here.
Dr. Johnson, this is showing that the ending balance will be actually higher than the beginning balance.
Correct.
Right, and I guess I'm saying
So-
that by the time we get to final adoption, it may not be.
Yeah. Do you have any estimates on what that might be? Was it around a couple $100,000 for the software and the additional PPE?
But we were gonna have a significant surplus this year.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that we were gonna go negative this year. It's just that right now I'm not showing it in this version. But the software is the piece that I didn't have the time to really analyze and make sure everything is in there.
So could you ballpark that?
I can give you a number, but it's probably not gonna be right. I mean, I would say we're probably talking another 50 to 100,000.
Okay.
So we'll still have 5.7 million.
Yeah, we'll still be relatively.
About zero.
And this is the kind of year that you dip a little bit into reserves for, right? This is
Now, the
like national
positive thing,
pandemic.
if you scroll over to the one piece, and we had talked about it, that at some point, if we need to, we can either borrow from it, or we can't, for working cash at the top. We can either borrow from it, or we can eliminate it and then restart it. So there's almost 600,000 starting off with in working cash as well.
So this is
I always called it a savings account.
right. This is the truly unbudgeted surplus, for sure. Correct? Is that
So we
accurate?
do have those dollars that,
Are unencumbered, are unplanned for anything that are set aside for rainy day.
and when I first came here, we had maybe a couple $1,000s in there, and then every year we emptied out the fund and started over again.
Mhm.
So then as we were able to, we started accumulating some dollars in there. So I think the revenue now is, well, this year it's 50,000. But we have been as high as 100,000.
But we'll still have healthy fund balance, even if we
It's
go.
not healthy, but it's something. I mean, it's better than zero, which is.
So
I mean, 5
It's a lot. We're alive.
7, yeah, we're fine.
We are going
We're
into
doing very well.
we are going into this crisis far better off than when we went into the last crisis.
But
We
when you
have,
see the audit on an accrual basis, it's probably gonna be, that beginning balance is probably gonna be somewhere around 800,000. 700 to 800,000,
right,
because of the accrual piece. This is the actual cash in the bank.
Right, but
But we
that's,
haven't-
yeah,
Because we still have that month and a half's worth of salaries and benefits that accrue back to the prior year.
correct.
but at any given time, what's our lowest cash balance during the year?
I can't tell you that, I should know that, but.
It was 4 point something this year. This
I know
past-
that it's-
For 2020, it was over 4 million was the lowest cash balance point throughout the school year.
All I know is that I don't have. to
And that's
every
usually
time there's
in
a-
March.
I still check the bank balance because I have to transfer money, but I don't have to worry about contacting the bank to do a tax anticipation warrant so we can pay payroll.
No,
And when
we're not
for
gonna be
the
doing that.
first 2 or 3 years I was here, that was probably October, November until February, March. Maybe even April.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things, you do what you gotta do, and
Right,
you know, I'm real happy with what the board did at that point in time to get us back into a situation where I don't have to worry about that as much, but it is something that we will have to watch as we go through this pandemic and see what the new reality is going to be, and look to see if, you know, if the state or the feds are gonna kick in some money to help us.
And the state next year, there are questions about whether the state will make the commitments. that they made
There's
in the
that
past.
question. The other thing that's happening
Which is a
is
big
it's
question.
been 5 years since the evidence-based funding formula has been in
Right.
place. So the other thing that happens next year too is they relook at everyone, and our enrollment has dropped.
Yep.
So we're hoping that, you know, we may only lose 50 or 60,000, or maybe 100 or 150,000. But we don't know yet how they're going to look at that, as well as whether they're even gonna have the money to fully fund that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because then if they start backing it down, then it does hit us.
Yep.
So,
for sure.
but there's not a whole lot we can do. The
No,
one piece that, especially in the ed fund, is it was 363,000 additional that we're getting from CEDAW for having classrooms in our building.
And that's not in here, right?
No, that is in here,
That is here.
but that's kind of a one-time thing, so that amount maybe every 4 or 5 years may increase, but you know, it's one that varies from year to year. I don't even know where we are as far as classroom space at this point in time, because we originally were talking about having 2 or 3 less classrooms, but you know, always in the fall, then they're looking for additional ones if somebody else backs out. So you know, I'm not exactly sure where we are, but it'll be somewhere in that range of additional monies beyond what we were previously getting that was budgeted to the O&M fund. This year, the difference I budgeted in the ed fund.
So if we were to look at on a cash basis, the fund balance, it would be, which is what most schools do when they're rated by the ISBE, which took me a while to figure out, because you'll see school districts that we know are not in as good as financial situation that have a higher financial rating than we do. But so like if we were to look at this on a cash basis, even this year would be at like 33% or 35% on a cash basis, right?
Probably, I haven't really, that's one that I always have to pull out the little chart to see what it says, but I know that the cash on hand we always do well on, but the cash balance, I think we would be, you know, get a decent rating as a result if they were looking at us on a cash basis rather than accrual.
So I know most local governments report on a cash basis, so it can be confusing.
I think the majority of the districts that report on accrual are in Lake County. You know, in the Chicago metro area, and the rest of the state pretty much goes on a cash basis. The other thing the accrual basis does that's really helpful for districts is it allows for the, like for instance, this year, the state gave us 2 transportation payments from last year and 2 from this year. And then we'll get the remaining 2 from this year, next year, et cetera. When they do the accrual basis, they look at what we should have received, even though the state hasn't given it to us yet. So it actually makes it a better picture of where you would have been had you had all the revenue you should have had.
Yeah, I think it's a much more transparent way of reporting if you're looking at, the whole year as opposed to one cash snapshot. I think it's definitely.
If you scroll down to the excess of direct receipts revenues over under direct disbursement, it's in line 22.
I'm on line 118.
Oh, and I'm in the budget summary.
Okay.
So this kind of shows you before the transfers. The second one there is O&M. The third one is debt service. Then we go to transportation, which has a healthy balance. And the next one is IMRF Social Security, which is showing a deficit. But that's one that if we have too much money in there, then we have taxpayers that will file an appeal and try to get some of their taxpayer money back because we have too much. And then the next one is
Capital projects.
capital projects, which is not a problem there. The next one is Fund 70, right?
Yep.
Oh, no, that's capital projects, okay. Capital projects is the 517. The one before that was IMR, okay. I just lost track of where it was. And then we go to working cash, which since there are no expenses, then you definitely have a positive revenue to expenses ratio. The next one is, which is the tort fund. And that's the other one that you have to watch because of, you'll have taxpayers that will say you have too much money in tort. That is one thing that we may want to look in the future at levying a little bit less in tort because tort is kind of a target right now. And it doesn't, we can pay the same expenses out of the ed fund that we can out of the tort fund. Some districts have actually eliminated it. There was a period where the state eliminated the tort fund, and then they added it back in. But some districts have just had that revenue going into the ed fund and paying it out of the ed fund. But the tort fund is basically for, you can use it for workers' comp insurance, you can use it for any kind of liability risk that you have. You can use it to pay attorneys for lawsuits, those types of things. So it is one of those that, at one point in time, we paid crossing guards out of it and other things because we were looking at the safety and the risk aspect, and you're not allowing that anymore. And then the very last fund is
Fire safety.
life safety. And not that I probably need to go back into this one and allocate some dollars. I know the other day we had another crisis with our phone system, that it was making noises and they thought one of the boards went out. So we probably need to revisit that this year and see what we can do, whether we do a voice over IP and have it all be virtual or whether we purchase equipment. But we probably do need to shift back there, and I probably, when we do the final, will allocate some dollars in this because a year ago we didn't have enough money in the life safety fund, but that did get added to our life safety plan and all the other items have been completed. And the way that it was worded was that we could use it for a phone system once all the other items have been completed. So either this year or next year, we really do need to look at getting our dinosaur replaced. I know that when Ernest called the company, they said, "Oh, we don't support that anymore." And, you saying, "Well, could you at least remote in like you did the last time and see if you can figure out what's wrong with it?" Because we're at the point now that we're buying used or refurbished boards to put into it. It's been 20 years old, so it's been a very decent system, but it's kind of at that end of its life. So
Seems like that would be a priority.
It probably would have been more of a priority had we not had this pandemic. So does anybody have any questions about kind of where I'm thinking we're gonna be, and knowing that we're probably looking at another 100 or 200,000 when we actually figure out exactly what's happening, what's required. It also seems like that the state and the health department keep changing the guidelines as far as what we're required to do as far as what we have to provide. So we did get our N95 and KN95 masks paid for today, so the KN95 should be on their way. I think it's like a 3-week delay for the N95s. But the health guidelines specify that basically nurses doing evaluation as well as custodial staff cleaning an area of people suspected of COVID, or would it be confirmed?
Suspected.
Suspected, okay. Have to have an N95 that is fit tested. And so we're able to do that at Vista and Lindenhurst, the same place that does our bus driver physicals. And Jason was able to acquire a small quantity from the health department.
No, a
No,
neighboring school district,
oh, neighboring schools, okay.
a kind school district.
That was very nice. I just know you said that you had some and you were gonna go pick them up.
Yep, we have 20.
Okay, so we have 500 N95s and 1,000 KN95s coming at a very reasonable price. It was the Illinois Association of School Superintendents that connected us with the company, but the N95s are $3.49 a piece, I think, and the KN95s are like 51 cents a piece. And they have a limited quantity, so.
Who's the vendor?
KMS, it's out of Southern Illinois. Carbondale?
All right, Carbondale. Yeah, Tim is from.
SMK products.
Great.
Carbondale. Yeah, Carbondale, Illinois. They were bombarded by school districts because they offered to sell these to school districts first. And there was a limited amount of time to put in your order, so.
I think it's great that we've been able to get all of that life safety.
Well, and even the local districts that, oh, I take that back, the KN95s are $1.51, not 51 cents. But the N95s are $3.49. So really good pricing.
Does anybody have questions for Dr. Jones? This is the first presentation, so
Yep.
we will have time to discuss this later.
We have one more meeting prior
Yeah.
to the actual budget hearing.
Right.
So make sure you look at this pretty carefully before the next meeting, because, maybe just get your questions down. Because then the meeting after we'll adopt it, right?
And I'll work on getting some things summarized and making some modifications between now and the next meeting so that it'll make it a little bit more clear.
Great. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Carissa.
Yeah.
Hi. This is not about the budget. There's an intermittent clicking coming across, and I don't know if Jason's aware of it.
It's probably
Just
my
get-
pen. Sorry. Was it you?
I'm sorry. I missed that. What is
Sorry,
it?
Tim.
Is it really loud for you?
Well, it was probably loud for anyone listening, if there's anyone listening. And what was it? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
My pen.
I'm training a German Shepherd.
Thank
Got
you
it.
for letting us know, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Um, Do we have to, we don't have to vote on the public display. We just displayed it.
No, you vote on,
We vote on displaying it?
Yeah.
Okay.
because there's a motion and a second on the
Yes,
floor,
there
so.
is. Yes. So, Veronica, can you please do a roll call?
Mr. Gouziak,
Yes, sorry.
Ms. I,
Yes,
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casvon Latourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Okay. Motion carries. That is just strange that you would have to vote on it, because it's just,
Right.
yeah, it's confusing, but
you're
it's
just
fine.
giving your approval to put it on display for people to look at.
That makes sense. Oh, yeah, to make it public. Okay,
Mhm.
that makes sense. Okay, on to item D. Construction change order. Dr. Johnson, can you
Yeah, I have
remind us what
photos
this is?
on my last report, but basically this is the, replacing the pickets that really and truly, if you pushed on them, I could see somebody falling off that second story deck, as well as the stairway, which was pretty wobbly. And that has been completed and it really does look nice. We had actually when the ROE came, I think a half weeks ago, and inspected for the occupancy, everything was fine. So that, as well as they looked at the parking lot and the bus parking area, but it's a little different because they are just like the village of Lindenhurst would give you your permit, you get our permits from the regional office. And even though we coordinate with the fire department and the local jurisdictions, all the authority for most of what we do, with the exception of zoning types of issues, come from the regional office. But anything zoning wise now has to go through the municipality. The bleacher issue, and I can't remember what district it was. They built tall bleachers that blocked
Oh, yeah.
neighbors' access, and so then that ended up being where now we have to do all the zoning through the municipality.
Yes. Okay, does anybody have questions about these? Item D, the construction change order. Anyone? Okay, roll call please, Veronica.
we don't have a motion yet.
We need a motion.
Oh, we don't? I'm sorry. Could you
I'd like to
please-
make a motion to approve the construction change order to Ephraim Carlson and Son to replace the 2x2 pickets, top railing, and stairs at the Milburn House in the amount of $3,675.
Second.
Thank you. I am off my game tonight, folks. Sorry about that. Roll call please, Veronica.
Ms. I,
Yes,
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casvon Latourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Gouziak,
Yes,
The motion passes. On to the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pull out to discuss separately? Okay, then I'd like to move we approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes the approval of minutes, the bill approval and payment authorization, the activity account, the personnel report, and that is all.
second,
Roll call, please, Veronica.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casvon Latourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yeah.
Mr. Gouziak,
yes,
Ms. I,
yes,
The item passes. On to information and discussion items. Item A, the EIS Administrator and Teacher Salary Benefit Report.
So every year we are required to place this on our website. So this is just a heads up that we will do that, and notice that it will be placed on the website this fall in accordance to whatever act that is that I can't think of off the top of my head, but we will do it.
Any questions from anybody about this? All right. On to item B, return to learn phase-in process. Dr. Lind?
Okay. I would like to present the return to learn phase-in process. We've talked a little bit about it as far as in board notes and conversations, but want to present this publicly so that we can have a further discussion. So I put together a little presentation. It's about 20 minutes long, and hopefully it will work. So if it doesn't work, Jim, if you could let us know if the sound isn't working.
Sure.
Jimbo's on it.
That can always be a challenge.
Jason, did you say 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Hi, Milburn Community. I'm Dr. J.
Yeah, well, that wasn't it.
Only got 1 minute of overlaps.
Yeah.
That's not the
Loud
right
and
one.
clear, Jason.
Yeah, it was real loud in here. Real loud.
Why are you yelling at us?
Why are you yelling?
I missed you in person, Jim. You're the one who makes me laugh.
Well, I can start my video and make you laugh. I mean, that's fine.
That's the one. It will help to get the right one up. Sure. Let's turn down the volume to start with. How about that? That's better.
Hi, I'm Jason Lind, and I'm going to just explain a little bit about our phase-in process and our plan for bringing kids back into the building. I'm just going to go through a few slides and see if I can explain some of the ideas that we're talking about for bringing kids back into the school. Again, this is flexible as the information that comes from the state and the health department is changing on a regular basis, but this is what we are thinking at this point. So let's get started. Before we come back, there's two categories that we need to consider. The first is the spread of the virus in our community. We're going to look at the numbers and see what they are at as far as the safety and when is it okay to return and when should we be taking more restrictive measures. I'm also going to talk about the safety protocols that are required by the Illinois Department of Health and the Illinois School Board. So there's two different agencies that we're working with protocols on how to keep our kids and teachers and staff safe. So those are the two areas that we're going to talk briefly about before we can talk about returning to school. First, let's talk about those numbers. Where are those numbers at? This was given to us by the by the Lake County Health Department last week. And so we've been asking for this for a while. When I say we, I mean the superintendents in the area in Lake County have been asking for some information and some numbers that we can kind of hang our hat on and say, this is when it is safe to return, and this is when it isn't. So how can we know as superintendents, we are not epidemiologists, when is it okay to bring students into the building? Well, this is what the Lake County Health Department, in working with the Illinois Department of Public Health and ISB and other departments around the state, have come up with. As you can see, when we are in a, when the number, they're looking at three different aspects. They're looking at the incidence rate, COVID-19 like illness admissions and the diagnostic testing turnaround time. So I'm going to briefly explain each of these and then show you right where we're at. And as you can see, giving it away right away, we are right smack dab in the middle of the hybrid model. But let's talk a little bit about these measurements that we're going to be using, and then we can talk about these three phases. So the measurements incidence rate, that's the number of incidents per 100,000 population. So it's a calculation that the Lake County Health Department uses to determine how much COVID on a daily basis is being added or increased in our county. They're saying that if it's greater than 14 per 100,000 in the population, that's a time when we should stay home and not have any kids come into the school building. So that would be a virtual or remote learning environment for all of our children. If it's greater than 14 per 100,000, and they're using a 7-day rolling average. If the numbers are within 7 to 14, they're saying that it's safe to bring small groups of children onto campus. We won't want everybody coming back, but we can bring small groups of kids, and under certain circumstances and priorities that we'll talk about later, we can bring them back onto campus. Currently, we are sitting at 11.1 is our latest measurement as of last Friday, and that is well within the 7 to 14 range. I will point out it's been as high as 13.4 in August. So we were bumping up against the, getting to that 14 per 100,000. So in recent weeks, it has been as high as 13.4. In early June or mid-June, June 19th was the low point, and it was down to 4.6. So that would have even fell into this in-person category that I had at the moment. So we've been lower in June, right after we had the lockdown and more restrictions placed on us. And since we've opened up some of the businesses and restaurants in Lake County, we're seeing that number creep up. But it has been relatively steady as of late and has not gotten above that 14 mark. So that's one of the numbers that the county is looking at and telling us that it is currently safe to bring groups of children back into school. Just as a point of comparison, on May 17th, at the height of the spread and outbreak in Lake County, the number was 26.7, just as a point of comparison. So we can see how that number is fluctuating. The other measurement that the county is looking at is COVID-like admissions. So if there's admissions to hospitals, and they look at the rolling average of 7 out of the last 10 days, is it going up? Is it going down? Is it stable? If it's stable, that's great. Currently, we are at a stable level. It has gone up only 1 day out of the last 10. So we've been very stable in that area. So that's good. And that allows us to go into this hybrid model. And it also is the same metric for the in-person model. So we're well within our range there. The third item that they've asked us to consider, or that they would consider in determining that it's safe for us to return to school, is the diagnostic testing turnaround time. So if we're waiting more than 10 days to get results for tests, at that point they're saying that's going to be a problem, and that's not going to help us with contact tracing, and the spread of the virus could become out of our control again. So that's the third item that they're looking at to say, well, in this case, it's safe to return. So we are smack dab in the middle of this hybrid model. Let's talk a little bit about what that means here. A virtual would be, of course, everyone 100% in the return remote setting. That would be learning from home. A hybrid is some students learning from home and some students learning at school. And an in-person would be everybody returning to school and being able to come back. So currently we are cleared as far as the metrics go. As far as our numbers go, we are safe to return students to school. The second area that we have to look at are the protocols. And this is what's really been keeping us from opening on time. One of the biggest challenges has been the constantly changing protocols, and it may seem minor to some people, but to us it's very important because we want to keep our kids and our staff safe. So we want to make sure that we are following the protocols that we need to follow in order to open safely. I'm only giving you a few examples of some of the protocols that have changed recently. The initial frequently asked questions that I'm taking this from was created on June 25th. So June 25th, they created a document of frequently asked questions, and by they, I mean the state of Illinois, the Illinois State School Board created this document, and they've been updating it regularly ever since June 25th. Some of these are changing now daily. For a while, it was every week we were getting updates, and now it seems like it's every day. As you can see, it updated on 8/13, 8/19, 8/18, 8/20, 18, 18, and 8/20. So this has been the most frustrating part of trying to return students on campus. Some of these are pretty major. So last week, updated, if a student is sent home sick with suspected COVID symptoms, that means they have any of these symptoms: cough, fever, diarrhea, shortness of breath, etc. There's a long list of symptoms. Must all their siblings or household members be sent home as well and quarantined for 14 calendar days? Well, the answer to that one is yes. And that was updated last week. So if we send a student home with any symptoms, perhaps a stomachache or a cough or any of the symptoms that are on the list, all of their siblings would have to be quarantined for 14 days unless they can prove that it was not COVID related. So in other words, anybody that we send home from school that has any of the symptoms or that reports any of the symptoms on our screener, they would have to, their whole family would have to be quarantined then for 14 days until they go to the doctor and get either a negative COVID test, or it could be that the doctor would do for example, a strep throat test and determine that it was strep throat. So it would not be COVID related in that case. So I'm not going to go spend too much more time on this, other than to say these protocols are changing. They're complicated. We're working through this, and that has been the biggest reason why we haven't been able to open as of yet. So the Lake County Health Department also recognizes that this should be a phase-in process, starting with virtual and moving to a hybrid, and then for a full in-person model. And that is just a different look at this virtual hybrid to in-person progression. So we are currently in a full remote virtual environment. And again, according to the numbers, we are able to move into a hybrid learning environment based on prioritizing risk and having some people on campus and following all the protocols. So what we are working on now is getting the correct protocols in place for us to be able to open. will mention too that with protocols, one of the changes that happened last week was the requirement that school nurses who are assessing as a student or staff member reporting a symptom must have the correct PPE, and they added an N95 mask, gown, and gloves to that, and which doesn't sound bad, except that N95 masks have not been available to schools this summer because they've been prioritized with healthcare facilities. So we have been unable to procure N95 masks until recently, and we have ordered them, and they are back ordered, and we're trying to get them as quickly as we can, and we're working on that. So that's been quite a challenge for us. We do have some masks to get us started, so we did procure some masks, but we will definitely need more as the school year opens and as we bring more students on campus. Also, that involves getting fit tested and for all of our nurses, and that's a process that takes some time as well. Along with our custodians, and that custodians who clean areas of suspected COVID cases also must have an official N95 mask and be fitted for that before they're able to clean that space. So what does Milburn's phased-in approach look like? Right now we're in phase 1 with everyone doing remote learning, early childhood through 8th grade. As we start to prioritize and who we bring back, we are following the state guidelines. The state guidelines tell us that the younger children and children with special needs and at-risk students and students with English as a second language who are more impacted by remote learning need to come back first. So that's what we are prioritizing. We are going to start with early childhood and kindergarten along with Group A. Group A is our structured learning program, cross-categorical programs in MES and MS. Those are self-contained special education classes. So that first phase will be early childhood, kindergarten, and Group A students. We would like to start that on September 9th. September 9th is the first day that our students would be in school or be available to be in school after Labor Day weekend. So Labor Day weekend, or Labor Day, is the 7th. On the 8th, we have a staff training day. And then on the 9th, we would plan to bring in this group of students. We are starting small to make sure that we're able to do this and to be able to handle the protocols and make sure that it's safe for both our children and staff in the building. Provided that that goes well and that our numbers stay low and we are okay to progress, the following week we would add first grade to that list. So we would have kindergarten, we'd keep the same group in, and then the next week we'd add first grade. If that goes well, the following week, then our anticipation of second, third grade added to that group. Then the next phase would be 4th and 5th, and possibly 6th at the middle school. So 6th grade, we would start a rotation then at the middle school of 6th grade that first week. The second week, 6th grade would go home, and then we'd go to 7th grade. 7th grade would go home the following weekend, and then we would bring in 8th grade. Middle school is a little bit different and more complex. So that will take a little bit more, there's just more moving parts to that. So bringing in one grade level at a time to start with until we get more efficient or the numbers come down better and it's we're in a more safer environment. We'll be bringing in one grade level at a time. phase 6 then would be if we could bring in K-8 all together at once, all of those that chose to be in person. So hopefully we can get there this year. That's our definite hope. And I think that is a possibility at some point in the school year, depending on how the community spread numbers are looking and how healthy we can remain. If we follow the protocols and we don't send kids to school who are sick, and if our staff, when they're sick, they stay home, and we don't spread whatever illness is out there, whether that be COVID or the flu or strep throat or anything else, we want to make sure that we follow all the protocols, and that will help us get more kids into school for a longer period of time. Finally, when we do come back, as I was talking about and alluding to a little bit, we have to be very, very strict. These are non-negotiables from the state of Illinois and from the Lake County Department of Public Health, carried down through the Illinois Department of Public Health, the decision tree for symptomatic individuals. So if a student or a teacher has any of the following symptoms, we must send them home, and they must quarantine for 10 days. Any family member must also quarantine for 14 days. Now, we don't control family members who may be working in other environments, but in my case, because I work in the schools, if my daughter or sons are sent home for any of these symptoms, I would be quarantined for 14 days. The person or the student or the adult who has the symptom would be 10 days because there's an assumption that they've already had the illness building for 4 days prior to that. So any of the following symptoms: fever, headache, shortness of breath, cough, sore throat, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain. In addition, the following symptoms: congestion or runny nose, new loss of sense or taste or smell, nausea, fatigue, muscle or body aches. So for any of those that are sent home, any of those that are exhibited at school or at home, we must stay home or send that person home. So how do we get back into school after we send somebody home? Well, we can wait for 10 days, and if symptoms go away, we'll be fine, and that student can come back to school. And any family members after 14 days and there's no symptoms, they can come back to school as well, or with a doctor's note. So if we send someone home for a fever, they must go see a doctor and get a doctor's note to be cleared to come back into the building. If a doctor does, again, a strep test and find out they have strep throat and that's causing that fever, then we know that it's not COVID related. Or if it's a negative COVID test, if we go get a COVID test and show that it's a negative test, then we can come back to school. So hopefully that testing turnaround time remains low and continues to even get lower so that we can rapidly determine if someone has COVID or not and can be cleared to come back to school. So we will be sending out more information about this as we get closer to bringing kids back into the building. So with that, of course, I always welcome questions, and this is for a board presentation as well. So this won't be live, but feel free to email me anytime, any questions that you may have. The resources are the Lake County Health Department metrics and the Illinois Department of Public Health and ISB. So if you want to go on those websites at any time, Lake County Department of Public Health, Illinois Department of Public Health, or the Illinois State Board of Education, all of this information can be found in those websites. Thank you, and we will continue to be in touch.
That's great, Jason.
Okay. So I'm planning on sending that out to parents tomorrow. So they have it.
So questions for Dr. Rose?
Well done.
I have one question. At what phase are the kids and the teachers not needing to wear masks at this point, as far as you know?
On ours, that would be the last phase, phase 7, 8.
As I recall, there was there was some pushback, I should say, from parents that weren't going to send their kids to classes if they needed to wear masks.
Right. So that won't be this year, I don't think. That's if there's a vaccine or if we're given it, if there's zero transmission in our community, then we'd go to that phase. But that would be the state. And I'm sorry to mix up phases because there's the state phase in, and there's the Melbourne phase in, and then there's the 3 levels. But for the state phase 5, we're still in phase 4. So.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay. It does sound like there will be potentially kids in school and they will have to wear masks. Is that correct?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Yes.
All right. And if parents are not going to send their kids because they have to wear a mask, then they stay remote?
Correct.
Okay, through all phases.
Correct.
Okay. I anticipate, I think, some pushback if a student is sent home and then parents need to quarantine for 14 days. That would appear to be a non-starter, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, why would parents set themselves up for that? Why send a student to school where they either they will get symptoms or they'll be exposed to symptoms, and at that point, it sounds like some form of quarantine of the rest of the family comes into play. That doesn't sound like a great idea.
right. But I can't wish that one away. That's what I discuss with the Lake County Health Department twice a week. And how can we be safe and maybe have some discretion there, and there's none. So I understand they're trying to keep us safe, but that's a really tough hurdle to get over to open schools. And I understand that's a huge concern for parents, and they've voiced that since July when we first had the choice. They said, wait, I'm not comfortable sending my kid to school if they're going to just be sent home right away and have that bouncing back and forth, or I have to take my kid to the doctor now because they have a stomachache.
Yeah, or even worse, the kid may or may not have symptoms. Again, if I'm hearing this correctly, and somehow a quarantine of the family members comes into play. That's
Correct.
I mean, some people don't get to work from home; they have to go and make a living, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, why would we put families in that position?
Correct.
I mean, what we would be dictating to them is, we want your kid in school, but if it hits the fan, you could be out of work for 14 days. I mean, potentially, depending on how this shakes out. That's a horrible position to put parents into.
Well, we can't require them to quarantine at home.
They just can't come here.
They just can't come here.
It's not
Okay.
quarantine in your house. It's not. In place. It's just you can't come to the school.
Yeah.
So
Once Lake County Health gets a hold of it, what we'll be doing is setting up the parents to need to quarantine. Because it's not us going to be doing it, but they're gonna have those goofy contact tracers or whatever positions that they made out there for tracking this stuff down. And so again, are we
Hey,
going to
Jim.
be asking parents to do that?
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
I need to clarify something
Okay,
to make sure we're really clear on that. If we send a kid home for a symptom, we do not report that to the Lake County Health Department.
okay,
The only thing we report to the Lake County Health Department is if there's a lab confirmed case of coronavirus.
okay.
Does that make sense?
And when we
Yep,
say
More
for
sense.
for a symptom, we're not talking about a shut-in-place order for that household. We're talking about they can't come here.
Yeah.
For 10 to 14 days. Does that
No,
make
it's also
sense?
just an implied recommendation.
It's a recommendation to quarantine, but we're not going to control. We have no authority and no knowledge of controlling where other people go. Schools will be notified though. So
Well,
siblings,
is it vigilante?
siblings,
Making sure everything's right.
You've got nothing better to do, all right?
He's already got a mask.
I'm so rested up.
yeah, no, that's a good point, Jim. I appreciate you clarifying that.
I think you're gonna be a busy man for the next few days, as if you haven't been already. Once that video hits.
I don't think people should be too surprised. We've been talking about this for a long time, so.
Good.
But yeah, I will continue to have, when I send it out tomorrow, I'll also invite people to attend the Wednesday sessions. I'll have 2 sessions this Wednesday at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock again on Zoom for parents to drop in or staff to drop in to ask any questions or share thoughts. That's been very helpful this summer, so it's helped a lot. So all we can do is try. Our goal is to continue to keep trying, and we want to get as many kids back into school as often as possible.
Have they relaxed the whole shutting the classroom down thing yet?
They have not relaxed the shutting the classroom down thing. So if a student is in class and has a symptom, they're still treating that as a potential COVID case until it's proven otherwise. So the only thing they're not doing is, thankfully, is causing that classroom then to be sent home and quarantined for one symptom. So the child leaves the classroom, the whole class has to go to another class in the building. So they have to physically pick up their materials and move to another location in the building. And then we have to leave that room sit for up to 24 hours. And then we can sanitize that room. And then those kids can come back in and continue learning.
So Jason, how many spare rooms do we have planned at this point?
Well, that's why we're bringing back 1 grade level at a time to see how often that happens, because with kindergarten and 1st and 2nd grade in the building only, we've got lots of rooms. If we brought everybody back at once, that could be a big problem quick. So we're going to try and see how this goes, and hopefully there won't be too many kids with symptoms. First, we have fewer kids in the building because some families are choosing remote, which is great. And then the kids that come into the building, hopefully if they're not feeling well, if the kids have any sort of whatever, if they're not feeling good, hopefully they stay home to begin with, so we don't have to send them home. So that's what we're
I think the only
going
plus
for.
side is I think parents have a lot of impetus to make sure their children are A-OK healthy.
Yeah.
When they send them to school, because
We
if
want
that
this to
child
work.
then
Right.
has a stomach ache, then none of the kids in that family are coming back to the school for 10 14
Right.
days.
Right, because it could impact the siblings, but it could also, people are going to be careful because we don't want to spread it. Because if there's COVID cases in the school, then if there's, right, then we're shut down for extended period of time. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
Is it looked into any possibility of obtaining tests or so?
Yes, we have looked into the possibility of becoming a remote testing site. It is not advised. It's really difficult right now to get the testing materials. So even though companies will come and do it, it's not going to help us.
Yeah.
It's better to go, the best is to go to your primary care physician. That seems to be the quickest turnaround time at this point. I know the testing site in Waukegan is really slowed down, so there's no waiting. There's not that many people going to get tested at that particular site at this point.
Could we recommend if any kids that a situation arises, we had symptom, we gotta send it home. Do we have literature or just like a prepared recommendation about this? It would be best if you went and got tested right away. So
Oh yeah, sure. For sure.
because that way, if you urge them into that, and then the sooner you know, I mean, you still have to move the whole class up.
Yeah, the whole class has to move either way, but the sooner we figure out that that's a strep throat, which is bad enough,
Yeah.
but
Not fun.
no, it's not fun. But it's treatable and more common, and we can get the other kids back in. Now, hopefully this will cut down on our strep throat transmission this year and all the other bugs that go around the schools. We should have clean hands.
Yeah.
I know I felt better this year, actually.
Yeah, less going,
Less going around.
sure.
But it's a big challenge.
Do we have further questions for Dr. Lynn?
Appreciate the presentation.
Yeah, that was
That's
great,
great. Other information people don't understand.
Hopefully.
but I don't think it's too much that people's heads are going to explode.
I was shooting for 10 minutes. Didn't work.
Oh, yeah.
When I saw the 1 minute time and you said 20 minutes, I thought it was a joke.
No,
Nobody laughed.
no, I wish.
On to the e-learning plan process.
Okay, so the state last week gave us more work to do, which was great.
That's
So
what we needed.
it's not a huge deal, but we have to go through a process for approving our e-learning plan and our program. So now we are all being, the way it worked last year is that you could do an e-learning plan or what the state called a remote learning plan. And we didn't have to get them, we had to post them, but we didn't have to go through the formal approval process. And we're still following all the guidelines for it, but we didn't have to jump through the hoops. So now we have to jump through the hoops. And our plan is already posted on the website. We've already written notification to our parents a long time ago. But we have to go through this process as a school board. So we have to publish in a newspaper that we're going to have a hearing. So we're going to have a public hearing at one of the next board meetings. I don't know if that'll be the first one or the second one in September, whichever one works out for us. We've already done the written electronic notice to parents, collective bargaining representatives of the school district. We will have to go back and verify that if we have not done that. And then the school board has to approve it. And then it gets sent after the public hearing, the school board approves it, and then it gets sent to the Regional Office of Education to get approved. And it goes through all of the resolution paperwork, and we will get it done. The good news is the plan already has, because when I wrote it out and we developed it this summer and last spring and kept adding to it, we were looking at these criteria anyway, so it has it in there, but we might have to change or add a couple of items to make sure they're covered.
Could we have a presentation on what that is?
The plan? It is on our website. It is posted
Under-
on the front page under learning pathways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
Okay.
That's the plan. So we've had a presentation. I can do it again.
No,
That's
that's, I didn't know. I didn't know that.
But if there's anything new and changing, I will update that and update the board on that. So it's under learning path. It's called Fall 2021 Learning Pathways on the front page of the website. That's it. That's the e-learning plan. And it hits all of the items that are supposed to be in.
Does anybody have any further questions about the e-learning plan? On to item D, site-based expenditure report for fiscal year 2020.
Apologies, I thought that was,
That's on the one that Veronica sent us.
Yeah.
So do I have it in an email, Steve?
um,
Is this for reporting on the Illinois school
This is
board card?
actually the part of the report card. So it's the, basically it just tells how much per student we spend at the elementary school and the middle school, it's basically just two numbers.
Wasn't this developed for those school districts that were really big and they had some in, you know, some schools that were in wealthier areas and some schools that were more underprivileged areas, and they found that they were spending a lot less per student, and you know, there were unequal resources.
That's
Yeah.
exactly why it was developed. Yes, it was for to monitor and to be an equity. So if you had 5 elementary schools like Antioch, for example, and you're spending, you know, extra amount on this school, and it happens to all be wealthy students attending that school, and then you've got another school over here that has students low economic standings attending, then that would be a problem. So now we have to report on that, but we have to report even though we have 1 elementary and 1 middle.
That are like a half mile.
Right. Well, yeah, and all the kids go to it. I
Yeah.
can't find it, Steve.
It's the one that
Yeah.
Veronica sent us.
Okay, it might take us a second.
I wasn't on it, because I know it's in there. It's where I've heard it from, but I can't remember where I said it.
Looking forward to.
I thought I could just hold it,
Oh,
yeah,
so even though everybody goes to both schools, we still.
but it is something that the middle school costs more per student simply because of the fact that they're departmentalized as opposed to classroom based. Not a whole lot more than that. $200 even more per student.
Okay.
All right.
Anybody have questions about this?
It takes longer to read than it does to look at it.
Yeah.
It was probably about a 4-hour process to get that thing turned out.
I looked at it and I thought, okay, and then moved on. Just not.
The thing that they also do is they separate the local and state dollars from the federal dollars. So if you're in a, let's say you were, had a lot of Title I eligible students, then the federal dollars would be higher.
That is.
You can tell we don't get a whole lot. from that. Most of our expenses are state and local.
Does anybody have questions for Dr. Johns about this? Okay. For future agenda items, we have the press policy updates, the review of, let's just say as presented. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add at this point? Any future agenda items? This is the best time to give them to me. Okay. On to superintendent report. Dr. Lynn?
Okay, so a couple of things from today. We started first day of school. Some things went great, some things were glitchy, as to be expected. Zoom was having issues. The national Zoom company, the website was down this morning, so that caused quite a bit of panic. So we were running around trying to get a workaround with that. We discovered kindergarten iPads weren't. They had to go through extra steps that we didn't know about because it was the first time they had opened up that iPad. So different authentication steps for parents. So that I'm sure that was frustrating, and teachers were frustrated and didn't know where their kids were. So there's some things that were frustrating. We learned from it, and tomorrow will go a lot quicker and a lot better. So one thing positive about today, we didn't lose anyone on the bus. First time ever. First time ever. So no lost children going to the wrong house or getting on the wrong bus or panicking in that way. So that was kind of nice.
Reaching for a silver lining there, man.
Hey, but if you've ever been on the other side of that in the office when we've lost somebody, there's nothing worse than not knowing where a child is. Nothing. Middle school had 97% attendance today, 97.5 or something. That's amazing for first day and on remote. So that's awesome. And yeah,
What's like the traditional first day?
probably 98, 99. There's very few kids that miss the first day. There's always some because some kids are sick, but that's pretty good.
Yeah.
A typical, our average attendance is around 95%, if that gives you a ballpark, which is really high. But I'm impressed with that just because it's remote learning and kids didn't have to, it's easy not to show up, I guess. Easier, maybe.
Same place as showing up.
Yeah, right. Our nurses, of course, Dr. Johns mentioned this earlier, were fitted with N95s today. So we're rocking and rolling on that. Now we're working on protocols. We're moving and setting up the nurses station in this building to handle isolation room, because we have to have separate facilities for an isolation room and kids who are just going down for regular bumps and bruises and medication. So we have a well visit and we have our sick wing right across the hall now. So we're going to reset up our nurse's office to do that. That's all I've got. Other than that, it's pretty good. Looking forward to tomorrow and another day.
And what was the attendance at the elementary level?
I didn't check. I didn't have time to check. I didn't get that report yet. So it was tricky because of the hiccups in the technology. So I'm guessing it was lower. But I did talk to fifth grade. Fifth grade was 1 or 2 kids in every class that didn't show up.
Yeah.
So that was good. So I'm guessing it's 98%.
Oh, you mean in every grade or every?
No, each of the class teachers that I talked to in fifth grade, none of them had more than one had 1 kid missing. The other one maybe had 2 missing. The rest were 1 or 0. So that's real good.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Wood? Okay, on to the business report, Dr. Johns.
I don't have a lot tonight, but I will mention we did start lunch service today, and we had 15 meals that we delivered to families, and then I don't know how many came on site. Because we had an hour this morning to just come on site. We're offering 2 days worth of meals. Wednesday, we're going to then start offering 5 days of meals, and then we'll have meals billed every Wednesday. But unlike the summer, where the meals are free for everyone, this one is as though we're at school. So if you're a free lunch student, you pay nothing. If you're reduced lunch, you pay 40 cents. If you're regular lunch, you pay $3. But it does, you know, if families are having difficulty, you know, dealing with everything else, and they're looking at like the easy way for their children to get lunch.
Okay, anything else?
I'm sure there is. But I can't think of it.
Sure. As soon as we adjourn, it'll pop in. Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, on to board reports. Does anybody have anything? Okay, well, I just wanted to say congratulations to Ben and the elementary staff for giving us a really, really successful, I thought, supply pickup today. It could not have been better from my point of view. I mean, you drive up, you had your little thing, and they put the supplies in there, and you drove off. So it was, there wasn't a line because it was so efficient and so organized. And way to go.
Agreed. Yeah, slick.
I did think of one of the things we need to do. Starting actually yesterday, today, they're starting construction on Milburn Road. They started today painting the bridge. They're going to replacing the culvert right there across the road, and then repaving the entire thing from 045 to I believe between now and Thanksgiving. So it will create some problems if you start waiting to get back and back.
Also, when I need to go to the store.
Go south.
Yeah, I saw them. I mean, I drove past with them and they didn't have any kinds of cones or flares or anything. And I thought, oh my goodness,
No.
these guys are just painting the bridge.
As I say, when I left, you know, with around 9 o'clock or so, they actually had people with signs saying slow. But yeah, it was a little scary when you could see the paint spraying out when you were driving right by it.
Yeah, I kind of thought I don't want to be this close to these workers. So. All right, anybody else have a board report? Anything they'd like to say? It's your moment.
This is really not important, but is it the county that would work on this road, or is it Rockwood?
Yeah, I believe it's a different eyeball. I don't know.
Who notified you?
There was a gentleman, they told me he was from IDOT, but I didn't get a card from him because he left in the phone. He gave, my administrative assistant has his phone number and contact information.
It's not a big deal.
So they're also going to be building a sidewalk and doing new culverts, driveways in the next spring. New 45 to Bridge High School. So,
Really?
That'll be awesome.
That would be cool.
Right. Okay. Then there being no further business, I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
I think we can do it all in favor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.